What's up, VC? It's Steve again, Harmless Rebel, and it's finally here. It's finally time for part 3 of my Judas Priest collection. This has been by far the most requested video in the last year. And I haven't looked, but it probably has been about a year since I did part 2, so I've definitely been slacking on getting this one done. Initially, this was going to be my final in the collection. There's actually going to be one more. I was just going to do the 90s. Or I was going to do from 1990 to present day, and when I started looking at it, it's just too much to cover, especially to do any kind of in-depth coverage. So I'm just going to do the 90s, or I'm going to start with 1990 and actually go through the Tim Ripper Owens era, and then the final video will come in the next few weeks, and that'll be the rest of the catalog. So I've actually been planning on doing this one for about a month and a half, and what held me up was there was one particular album that I ordered from Italy. And it just took forever to get here. It was supposed to be here in about 2 weeks according to the tracking, and it just didn't show up. So let's just kind of jump into this. If you haven't seen part 1 or part 2, I highly recommend you checking those out first. You'll find the links to each down below. I showed some really cool stuff, some definite favorites there. And these aren't just me showing my collection. You know, I get pretty in-depth on some of these albums. So it's kind of like a collection / review of the entire Judas Priest catalog. So if you're new to Priest, or if you're interested in checking out some Priest, definitely start with those. So let's just start in the background. I'm not going to talk about this much because I'll cover it in the next video when I'm covering that era. But we're listening to a Touch of Evil live, which was, I believe this was the first live. No, I take that back. It's a live one with the original lineup. Minus the original drummer. So let's just jump into it. I'm going to show a couple of additions I've made to the collection since the last video, so and then we'll roll into the 1990s. First up, this is one I found about 2 months ago, and it was one I mentioned in the earlier video, but just didn't have a copy of it yet, so I was really happy to run across a real nice copy, and this is Hero Hero. This is one of my favorite album covers of all time. Kiss actually has a bootleg using this same album cover. But this came out in 1981. This is the first pressing. They also did a pressing in the early 2000s on 180-gram vinyl. But this is the first U.S. pressing. And what this is a kind of it is a comp. It's got the full Rock and Rolla, which was the first Judas Priest album. It's got 6 songs off of Sad Wings of Destiny, and then an 81 remix of Diamonds and Rust. Rock and Rolla on here too is also a 1981 remix. I prefer the original mix of it, but this one is pretty good, and I do like the 81 remix or the remastering of Diamonds and Rust. All the songs off of Sad Wings of Destiny are all exactly the same. So, very nice though. If you run across this, I definitely recommend picking this one up. Especially if you don't have those first 2 albums. This is also one that I just picked up. I picked this one up about a month ago. And I just picked it up because it's Judas Priest. This is actually by far my least favorite Judas Priest release. And this is Johnny Be Good. This is the promo copy. It's the same song on both sides. Johnny Be Good, of course, a Chuck Berry song. They did this for the movie Johnny Be Good. And if I remember, it was on Ram It Down as well. Let's see. If you see me looking over the side, it's because I got notes on everything. So I apologize ahead of time for that. So let's move into the 1990s. First up, what is there that I can say about this album? This just absolutely amazing from beginning to end. I loved the direction that the band was going with this album, and was kind of crushed after this was released when Rob left the band. But we have 1990s Painkiller. This is actually the 2010 Back on Black repress. And Back on Black did a killer job with this one. Oh. Sorry about that, guys. But we'll take a look at the albums here. That'll be one side where you got the band name and logo. And then, of course, custom labels on both sides. If I remember correctly, they also did a blue vinyl version of this one. I've never seen that one. I paid way too much for that one. Shortly after that, they started popping up all over the place. They were real hard to find for a while. I'm not sure what it was, but obviously that was the last album with Rob Halford. Rob Halford would leave the band for close to 15 years after that. It's the first album with Scott Travis on drums. Scott Travis, just an amazing drummer. He was with Racer X before Judas Priest. Just so many good songs on this album. There's really every single song on this album just really kicks ass. But some real standouts for me were Painkiller and Hell Patrol. Hell Patrol doesn't get a lot of love, but just an amazing song. Nightcrawler, I like Nightcrawler. I think that one gets overhyped a little bit. And then, let's see. Between the Hammer and the Anvil, another absolute classic. I believe that's still part of their main set when they toured. Sorry about that. Got my phone going off. It's actually funny, as I'm doing this video right now, John is texting me, SMF Captain Howdy. He's at the club there in Canada about to watch Tim Ripper Owens perform with his new band. He just sent me a bunch of pictures with Tim. Oh, I was just talking about them doing this song. This was from 2009, and they're still doing Hammer and the Anvil. This album's just amazing. This album was actually held up for almost 6 months, I believe. I was reading that Judas Priest was embroiled in that whole satanic lyrics and the PMRC issues back in the 80s and early 90s. And this album got held up because they were actually being sued by two families that tried to blame Judas Priest for their children committing suicide. Just so ridiculous. That whole era with the PMRC and the satanic lyrics and the spinning the records backwards. It was so crazy. But they did finally, Subliminal Messages, that's what I was trying to think of. They did finally release it later on that year, though. And then after they toured for this, Rob was gone. He went on to do a couple different projects. He did, I think he released a couple albums under Halford. He did, what was his other band? I'm drawing a blank now. I just had it in my head a second ago. Fight. He was also in Fight, which I should have brought those out too. I have a couple of Fight albums as well. Next up in 1997, it was announced that Tim Ripper Owens had joined the band, and that they were in the studio recording. And I think that spurred Sony to try to make a little money off of Judas Priest being back in the news. And they released this. This is the best of Judas Priest, Living After Midnight. When this first came out, I was really excited because they listed a bunch of live tracks, and I thought it was going to be new material. And that just wasn't the case. Every song on here is previously released stuff. You have stuff from their early albums. All the live stuff here was either from Judas Priest Live or from, I think it was all from Priest Live. But no new material here. Still worth having if you run across it. This one usually sits in my car, which is why it's all cracked right there. And when I'm in the mood for Priest, I just pop this one in. That one actually gets listened to pretty regularly. Next up, kind of one of the grails in the collection. This one's hard to run across on vinyl. Next up, we've got Jugulator. Again, this is the introduction of Tim Ripper Owens into the fold, 1997. This one came out in October or November, if I remember correctly. Got the back cover. You got custom inner sleeves. Really cool shot there. Got the lyrics on the next one. And then a really good shot of the band right here. Actually, this is one of the things that SMF Captain Howdy just showed, that he got signed by Ripper. But this album didn't go over that well. And I get why. I'm not a big fan of the first single, which was Jugulator, either Jugulator or Bloodstained. I don't remember. The first couple songs on here, I just wasn't feeling. They kind of changed the sound completely. This was all written by Glenn and KK, which is no change. They write most of the Priest stuff. But they were trying to sound like, I want to say like Pantera. They were going for a groove metal sound on the first few songs. I just couldn't get into it. I don't mind the songs now, but I still don't pay as much attention to them as I do the second half of the album. Jugulator and Bloodstained are both okay songs. It just doesn't sound like Judas Priest. And then about halfway through, right around the Decapitate, track 5, the sound changes completely, and they go to more of a Judas Priest sound. From that point on, the album is amazing. The first few songs, though, you could just kind of live without, and unfortunately, those are the ones that they spotlighted in the media. Those are the ones they did the videos for. But there's some absolute classic songs on here, and a couple that they do live still. Burn in Hell, I loved. Abductors, I loved. Brain Dead, pretty good. Bullet Train is a great song. Cathedral Spires, by far the best song on here, and I would say that's probably one of the best songs of the 90s era Judas Priest, whether it was with Albert. I mean, even better than the stuff on Painkiller, in my opinion. Cathedral Spires is just an amazing song, and it's at the end of the album, kind of like a throwaway track. It just kind of blows me away. But if you haven't given this time, I didn't. I honestly didn't listen to this for the first time until maybe 2 years ago when I bought the CD. I just wasn't really interested in the Ripper era, and I was blown away when I heard it. Actually, the next album that I'm about to show is what turned me on to Ripper Owens and kind of got me interested in checking out this album. But again, this is 1997's Jugulator. The next thing that was released was a 2 CD, 3 LP live album. And again, this was my intro to Tim Ripper Owens. And I gotta say, I was completely blown away by this. This was released in 1998. Kind of hard to see. It's 98 Live Meltdown. Just a really killer double live. And actually, like I said, if you buy the LP, which is hard to find, I actually had a copy ordered. I ordered a copy, and then I got an email from the seller saying it has already been sold. He just forgot to take it off his for sale list. I was so upset. And I've missed out on it a couple times since then, but I will have this one relatively soon, one way or another. And you know, so I'll show this in a later video. But man, Ripper kills it. And what really blew me away was how good he sounded singing the Halford era songs. When he does Green Monalishi and Diamonds and Rust, I mean, his voice is amazing. And you didn't hear that really on this album. This is where you really start to hear Tim. And like, top notch. Definitely worth checking this one out if you've avoided the Ripper Owens era. And then last but not least for this video is 2001's Demolition. Like I said, I was just going to do the 1990s, but I wanted to go ahead and close out the Ripper Owens era of Judas Priest. So, excuse me. Last but not least, we have Demolition. This is the one that I've been waiting for. It took forever to get here. It's funny, I had heard nothing but bad things about this album. Whenever I see, you know, the Priest albums ranked worst to best, this one's generally the last or the second to last album. I actually bought the CD about a year and a half ago when I first started this series, because I was just going to show the CD. I had never had plans on buying this. And then I was looking for 98 Live Meltdown on eBay, and I ran across this for a really good deal. And I just couldn't not grab it. So here's the gatefold. It's on kind of thin, that thin European cardstock. It was only pressed in Germany, a very short run, and it's probably, I would say, by far the hardest of the Priest albums to get a hold of. But I was blown away by how good this album is. I don't know why it gets bad press. Priest stepped it up a notch. I've heard a lot of people say this doesn't sound like Priest. It's too heavy. They should have released it under another name. All this crazy stuff. It's actually right in line with what Priest was doing. With Painkiller, they got they got heavier than they had ever sounded. That's by far, next to this one, I think Priest's heaviest album. It's definitely the heaviest Rob Halford era album. And then with Jugulator, once you get past those first few songs, they were staying on that heavy streak for that second half of the album. And this just stays there. They did add a couple elements of what was popular. You hear a little bit of industrial stuff here and there. It's not invasive at all. But there's definitely some industrial effects at points on this album. But again, it fits and it sounds awesome. One thing I will say about this album is it does get a little bit long. And obviously, or honestly, the last couple tracks they could have left off. But they're still good tracks. And Tim Ripper Owens sounds amazing on this album. I was just blown away by how good this album was. I can't recommend checking this one out. I can't recommend... I highly recommend checking this one out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Just, again, a great album. But that's pretty much it for this video. We went 17 minutes. I'm glad I decided to split this into another one. Give me another week or two, and I'll get the next one out. I'm not going to sit on it for too long. I want to get this series done. Let me know what you guys think, what your comments are, what your thoughts are on the Ripper era of Judas Priest. That's it, VC. Take care, and I hope you have enjoy the rest of your weekend and have a great week.